Hi there, I'm Scott and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be running through how to play extended chords on the guitar. So chords like dominant 9s, major 13s, minor 11s, chords that go above the 7 notes in the scale. So today I'm going to show you how to, some basic shapes to kind of get into these and how to then eventually kind of form your own as well. So what are extended chords is a good place to start. Now extended chords come from generally a 7th chord. So they'll start off as being that basic 7th shape or form and then have the extension added onto it. This is different from something like an add 9 or an add like 13 where you're adding that note into just a major chord. An extended chord generally will have the 7th as well, and then you'll have the extension on top of that. So let's start off with the basics of how we actually get to the point of an extended chord and what we need to do to kind of form that in a theory sense. So this is a bit theory heavy, but I think it's really important to kind of understand how we build these chords and what is the process of building these. So to start off with, we're going to have a major chord. So the major chord has notes 1, 3 and 5 of a major scale. Now you'll notice that these chords, you're kind of playing one, missing one, playing one, missing one. This is what you call sort of moving in thirds. So C to E is a third away from each other, and then E to G, again another third. So then we can continue this pattern as we go. So then say if we're playing a major 7th chord, we're going to add then note 7 of the scale. So we're going to have 1st, 3rd, 5th and 7th. Now the same applies for then these extensions. So then as we go, we want to then include then the 9th onto that, and then we'd kind of move up through these depending on what chord you're going to play. So there are a few rules for just kind of forming these chords and how to actually play them on the guitar. Because obviously guitar has a few limitations with there only being 6 strings and you've only got a certain amount of fingers to actually play them. So what you might want to do is you might want to drop some notes or rearrange things depending on what chord you're playing. So the general rule is you'll need the root note, the third to tell you whether it's major or minor. So if it's minor, minor third, major, major third. The 7th to tell you whether it's a flat 7th, so a dominant sound, or a major 7th to tell you if it's a major 7 kind of sound. And then finally your extension after that. So for instance, if I was playing a dominant 9, the only notes I would need would be the root, the third, flat 7, and then the 9 afterwards. Let's actually start playing some of these and let's get into some of these shapes. So first what I'm going to show you is I'm going to show you some shapes starting on the E and the A string. Now obviously you could play shapes in any way you wanted to really, but this is a really good way to kind of start off, especially if you've not played these kind of chords before. The first step is really kind of building these bass shapes that we need. So a bass shape is going to include all the important notes that we need, so that root, third and the 7th. So let's start off with a root note on the E string. So our root's going to be on the E, our 7's going to be on the D, and then on the G string we're going to have our third. So the first shape is going to be major 7, so we're going to go root, 7 and third. And if we move our 7th back 1 fret, we're going to have root, flat 7 and third. Now this is for a dominant chord, dominant 7. And then if we move the third back 1 fret, we're going to have root, flat 7, flat third for a minor 7. Now let's just quickly run through these on the A string as well. So we'll start off with our major 7 shape. So we've got root, third and 7. Then we move the 7 back, so we get dominant 7, so root, third and flat 7. And then now to get the minor 7, all we need to do is then move our third back, so then we get root, flat third and then flat 7. Let's start off with an example of trying to play those chords and put them into practice. So it's a nice sort of simple chord progression just to kind of get using them. Okay, so now here's the important part. So this is the kind of next step. Now the next step we need to do is then we're going to look to add this extension. So first off, what we want to do is we want to take one of our kind of chord shapes and as a starting point. So the chord shape I'm going to use to start off with is we're going to look at a shape on the A string. So we're going to do C major 9. So what we want to do first is we want to form a C major 7th chord, so using that bass shape that we've used before. Now once you have that shape ready, then what you need to do is you need to find the closest kind of note that's going to be that ninth in the scale, so to that position. So now if we're working out what a ninth is, it's going to be the same as the second note in the scale. So if we look at that, we're going to be C, and then we're going to be D. So that D, with an extended chord, this is something that's important. It needs to be generally above these notes. So in the extension, what we need to do is we need to then have that on the top. So we see we've got that shape. Now then, what we need to do is just find the closest D, which we'll find on the 3rd fret on the B string. And we kind of you need to readjust your fingers slightly, and then bang, there we go, we've got a major ninth chord. So what we've done there is we start with our bass shape, and we found our extended note that we're going to add into that, and then we added that into our bass shape to then create this extended chord. Now let's just do another example starting on the E string. So the example we're going to do is we're going to try and form a G13. So G13 means G dominant 13. So what we want to do is we want to start with our dominant chord shape, and then we're going to look for what the 13th note of the scale is. So that's going to be the same as the 6th. So as we move through, we've got G, A, B, C, D, and then E. So that means we're going to add an E into the top of this chord. So then when we add that, we're going to add 5th fret on the B string, and then we've got our chord G13. And now we've got that same example that we played through with the bass for chord forms, but now adding in these extensions. So we're going to actually try and sort of build our kind of chord shapes and chord forms, and then hopefully try and then put a bit of a chord progression together. Now, like anything, there are exceptions to the rule. Now, in all the examples, we've taken out the 5th because it's not necessarily needed. It doesn't give us any new information. But you can obviously play these chords with the 5th in it. A good example of this would be, say, taking a sort of traditional sort of 7th bar chord and then adding the 9th into the top of that, and you actually get a really nice sound. And again, you could then make that minor 9th really easily, just play a minor 7 bar chord and then add that same note in. So you can obviously experiment around and try these different shapes out and try and work out how you could form these shapes yourself as well. Now, an important thing to consider is how these notes stack up. Now, if you've got 13th, for instance, you could include root, 3rd, 5th, 7, 9, 11, and 13. You could include all those notes and it would still be perfectly fine. But what you might want to consider is like the relationship of notes, especially on the guitar, like how they're being played. So say, for instance, a classic example is when you're playing a dominant 11. The 3rd and the 4th, which would be the 11th, are obviously really close together. They're only a semitone away from each other. So what you might want to do is you might want to maybe take out the 3rd. I know this is kind of going against what I was saying before, but it just can sometimes let the chord breathe a little bit. So what you might play is you might play this kind of shape here, where I've got root, flat 7, 9, and then 11. This can be quite a complicated topic, and it can be sort of take a bit of time to get used to playing these shapes, and actually kind of get into grips with the sound of these as well, and knowing what is kind of important to drop and what's important to leave. So hopefully these kind of shapes give you a bit of a basis to kind of start from, and actually to kind of build your own progression. So anytime you see, say, a major 7th or a dominant 7th, you can then think, right, what happens if I replace that with, say, a dominant 9th or a major 9th, just to kind of give a different sound to that piece of music that you're playing. And even just try these sort of shapes in isolation. You might find in some of my backing tracks that I've released, I've used these extended chords, and you could even just try and play along with them, and it could be a really good idea just as a way of practicing them. Like and subscribe for more content coming soon. I also have an Instagram page that you can follow for more of like snippets of my guitar playing. I also do lessons where you can visit my website, which is in the description below, and look forward to seeing you soon.